Imagine walking into a bank in a designer suit, portfolio in hand, after closing a $100 million merger just that morning, only to be told, "We don't serve your kind here." That's exactly what happened to Simone Carter, a brilliant black woman CEO in New York City. But what the smug bank teller didn't know, Simone owned more than half the properties on that very street. 5 minutes later, he wasn't just embarrassed, he was fired on the spot. What happened in those next few moments shook the entire financial industry. Stay with us for this jaw-dropping, real-life inspired tale of power, poise, and poetic justice, and don't forget to subscribe for more true story-style content that flips the script on prejudice and power. Now let's dive in. It was just another Tuesday morning when Simone Carter, CEO of Carter Tech Holdings and one of the most respected business moguls on the East Coast, stepped out of her black Bentley Continental GT in front of Empire National Bank in downtown Manhattan. Dressed in a crisp navy blue tailored Armani suit, gold-accented heels, and a watch that cost more than most people's monthly salary, she exuded a quiet but commanding power. Her assistant had confirmed that she had an appointment with the bank's regional director to finalize a multi-million-dollar transition of funds tied to a high-profile tech acquisition. But as Simone stepped inside, the room fell quiet just for a moment, as if the air itself paused to take in her presence. She walked up to the counter, portfolio in hand, and greeted the teller with her signature grace. "Good morning, I'm Simone Carter. I have an appointment with Mr. Hargrove. Could you kindly let him know I'm here?" The teller, a young man in his late 20s with slicked back hair and a smug grin, looked her up and down with a scoff and said, "Ma'am, this line is for clients. You can't just walk in here asking for execs." She tilted her head slightly, confused, and tried again. "I am a client, and I have an appointment. Could you check, please?" But the teller didn't budge. He leaned in closer and whispered, "Look, I don't know how you got in here dressed like that pretending you belong, but unless you're depositing a paycheck from the cleaning service, you need to step back and let real clients handle their business." The insult hung in the air like thick fog. The surrounding customers turned their heads. An older woman gasped audibly. A security guard shifted uncomfortably near the door. Simone didn't shout. She didn't argue. She simply reached into her portfolio, pulled out a black leather folder, embossed with gold initials, flipped it open to a document bearing her name and signature above an Empire National Bank ownership stake agreement, and placed it silently on the counter. The teller glanced at it and visibly paled. "Is that your name on that?" she asked softly. "Carter Tech owns 31% of your bank," she added, eyes never blinking. "And my cleaning service pays its staff better than you make in a month." The room was silent until the click of her stilettos echoed across the marble floor as she walked away from the counter and straight toward the executive wing. The teller stood frozen in place until a voice boomed from behind. "Derek." It was Mr. Hargrove, the regional director, red-faced and furious. "You just insulted our biggest partner. Step away from the counter." Within 5 minutes of Simone's entrance, Derek was escorted out by security, fired on the spot. But that was just the beginning. Began just 1 hour later in the boardroom on the top floor, where Simone now sat with the bank's top brass and legal counsel. Word had already spread like wildfire across the company's internal channels. PR was panicking. Executives were groveling. The CEO of the entire banking group had been alerted mid-flight and was now zooming in from Geneva to apologize. Simone, calm and calculated, leaned back in her chair and simply listened as excuses, apologies, and promises spilled forth. But she wasn't interested in groveling. She was interested in accountability. "This isn't just about Derek," she said sharply. "It's about a culture that allowed him to assume that someone who looks like me couldn't possibly be a power player." Silence again. She turned to the bank's general counsel. You'll be conducting a full equity audit of your customer service and executive hiring practices, and you'll report those findings publicly. Or Carter Tech will pull all accounts and advise our partners to do the same." The board murmured. In panic, pulling Carter Tech's funds would collapse 3 regional branches. Hargrove stammered, "Yes, Ms. Carter, absolutely." But Simone wasn't done. "And," she added coolly, "your annual supplier diversity report is 5 years out of date. Fix it." Her voice was measured, her tone surgical. She wasn't angry, she was precise, and they listened. As the meeting closed, the group stood to shake her hand, but she only nodded politely. On her way out, she passed Derek again, now seated outside HR with a security guard and a plastic bag containing the contents of his desk. He couldn't meet her eyes. Began with headlines. "Black Woman CEO Exposes Bank's Bias, Exec Fired, Reforms Promised," read one outlet. The story went viral overnight, and Simone's team didn't miss the opportunity. A clip of the incident captured by a customer on their phone was shared on Carter Tech's Instagram with a powerful caption, "Respect is not optional. Leadership is not always white." It garnered 2.4 million views in under 12 hours. By noon the next day, Carter Tech's social media had exploded with messages of support, job applications, and business offers. Celebrities reposted it. Political figures weighed in. The bank issued an official apology, but the real blow came when 3 of Simone's top partner companies, tech startups, law firms, and equity groups announced they were also pulling their accounts unless systemic reforms were put in place. Derek, meanwhile, appeared on a local blog trying to defend his actions, claiming it was all a misunderstanding. But receipts were everywhere. Simone didn't respond directly, but her company launched a new initiative the next week called Black LED Banking, a fintech accelerator program funding Black-owned and led banking startups with $10 million in seed capital. The first billboard went up in Times Square with her image and the words, "Power looks like this," was about legacy. 3 months later, Empire National Bank had overhauled its training, replaced 2 board members, and appointed its first Black female executive, VP, handpicked by Simone from her own mentorship program. Derek faded into obscurity, unable to secure work in the financial sector again. But Simone? She was invited to speak before the United Nations on economic equity and corporate responsibility. Her company's value doubled. The FinTech Accelerator. She funded 16 companies, 5 of which were now gaining national traction. But what made Simone smile most wasn't the headlines, or even the numbers. It was a handwritten letter she received from a young girl in Georgia that read, "I didn't know people like me could be in charge until I saw you." That letter now sits framed on her office wall. Because in the end, this story wasn't just about a bank, or a rude teller, or even revenge. It was about rewriting the narrative about who holds power, who deserves respect, and what happens when you dare to walk into the room like you already own it. And Simone Carter? She did. So remember, when someone tells you that you don't belong, show them the deed. Subscribe for more powerful stories like this, because the world needs to hear them.